Hello, and welcome to Transistor 3.3. I am Non-Euclidean Cat.
And I'm New Vegas.
And before we get into all of the action, there's a small announcement. You may have noticed there is an uncut version of this video. That is because there are going to be some significant dialogue changes. And in case those kinds of things interest you, you should check that out. But if you don't mind hearing our idiot honking over the nice video game, please feel free to stay where you are. Anyways, New Vegas, what is your experience with Transistor?
I have played this video game.
How much have you played this video game?
At least twice. I played it like once when it came out, and that was it was a really good time. And then I kind of ignored it for a while because it made me feel a lot of feelings, and that was something I was unfamiliar with. But I hit it up again for New Game Plus a little while later, and kind of got back into the feel of it. But yeah, outside of that, I've just kind of it's been floating around in my Steam library along with like 500 other games.
Then let's sort this out.
Well, you're a lot more spaced out than I am. I think I've done, counting the ones for this Let's Play, like 6 back-to-back playthroughs.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so I think I've played through this game more times than the developers have.
So you thought it was about time that you brought in me, an expert on video games.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Fantastic.
Of course. Now I would like to make an announcement.
What can it do?
This line right here that Jack is about to say is the only real one.
Yeah, come on. Something. People want to.
Alright, now that line, with that line right there, everything that Roy says that doesn't match up with the original run is me. That was me screwing around with files, and I will be exploring that in depth on the next installment, the Deep Dive number 2. But suffice it to say, there is a lot of unused dialogue in this game, and I decided to put some of it in. There's some interesting world building and some character building that you sort of miss out on without that dialogue. And I wanted to give everybody the complete picture.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I really like it when you get to see like unused stuff and like stuff that they like with this close to putting into the game, but they never really just kind of got around to it. Like, it's interesting to see the choices that they made behind the scenes and like stuff they couldn't exactly fit in.
I mean, what good is a suburb when the
Yeah, like the card game that was almost implemented.
things change
Wait, so this was going to be like a spin-off of Hearthstone?
enough that
No. It would have been like a sub mode of play,
What?
just like a side thing.
I want
There's a
it.
lot of code that exists for it, and a whole bunch of graphical assets too.
somewhere I can do my work.
Yeah, like,
real work.
Just
That's kind of one of the things that I love about like these devs is that they have so many ideas.
yep. Right, so now let's talk about what you gave me.
Yes.
Your loadout. You not only gave me a loadout, but you gave me an ethos behind the loadout, which was stun lock everybody and then just blow them up with a ton of packets.
Yeah.
But you also gave me a loadout that was based on sort of original game restrictions, sort of half the memory count and not all of the slots unlocked. So I did what you did, and then I decided, hey, let's make this a collaborative effort, and I decided to fill in the rest of my spots with things that sort of fit in with the ethos that you gave me.
Heck yeah.
So right now I'm circling how much memory I've got left over, and that is the original loadout that you gave me, and I'm like, okay, so how can I add to this? And, well, first thing that I thought of is, well, you said that the packets are going to be the main deal, so let's just bump the damage of everything up. Let's ensure that more things will be stun locked with bounce and, well, I guess with crash and bounce, equipping bounce to crash and crash to bounce, and then putting bomb into the passive slot, so I'm constantly spitting out packets, just in case I don't have time to lay them down in the middle of battle.
Yeah, that sounds like a really interesting idea, actually. Like, one of the things that I liked a lot about this loadout, like, I did it on my second run through. And, I kind of, like, I got halfway through that run, and then stopped for whatever reason, and I didn't come back to it for, like, a couple of weeks. And, I'd forgotten how I'd used it initially, and I kind of came back in and I was like, what the heck is going on here? How do I kill anything? And like I kind of just got into the habit that I'm pretty sure I might have seen at like one of the GDQ runs of this game.
Oh, there have been speedruns?
Yeah, there was one. I think it was like AGDQ 2014. But basically,
do you remember the time?
I think it was like, might have been like 45, 50 minutes.
Oh, wow. That's like half the time that I could do.
Yeah, they,
Dang.
From what I remember of it, the whole idea is basically you just don't use turn as much as possible, and instead you just, like, spam packets, and that, like, does, like, really high damage, and then you can just, like, combine that with, like, Crash, I think it was, that they used, and then, like, it just destroys everything really quickly. And so, yeah, it was like I was kind of emulating that a little bit when I did it, and, like, just, like, kind of go into, like, turn mode, like, spam a bunch of packets, and then because you can still crash things while you're outside of turn, like, you can kind of stun lock them, and then wait until you've got another turn and then just drop a bunch of packets and then like rinse and repeat.
Yeah. It's took me a while to figure out how to make this one work because, you know, with the haircuts being so damaging, I really wanted to keep my distance from the men.
Yeah.
And so I just, okay, I'll lay down a packet of packets here in the back, and then I'll try and pull the men towards me. And no, they actually don't like to travel very far from their starting position, so it didn't work too well.
I'm a little bit like disappointed that I only played this on my second run through rather than my third one, because like the way that they scale through the different like New Game Plus modes would have been really interesting to see. Well, I'm checking it out here at least.
Yeah, it's if you're curious, the Haunters only have two versions, 1.0 and 2.0, and it's just a flat health and damage increase between the versions.
Are you I haven't exactly caught up in a little while, but are you playing with any limiters on?
Yes, I've got the double damage, the shielded eggs, the double eggs, and superiority, which causes extra processes to spawn.
Oh, that's...
Yeah, so it's like, hey, I'm doing pretty good. I've got the stealthy haunter down, so that's good. That's good. And then here's a couple of weeds and a tripod and
This looks like I'm very glad that I'm not playing it, because it would get away from me very easily.
I am a very turn-heavy player. At least once I get to this stage of the game. In the earlier stages of the game, not so much, but
It's like one of the things I really like about packets is that like they kind of have a decent amount of range on them. It's like if you kind of work them out well enough, you can like place a couple down and then like knock some into the other ones, and just kind of make this huge chain reaction that is really fun to watch.
That's kind of sort of what I'm going for right now. I'm taking advantage of the fact that Slam will sort of knock the packets away from the attack a little bit in order to get a little bit extra range and hit the guys who are hiding in the corner without having to approach them.
It's a wise way to do it, I reckon. Got everything nailed down pretty good. I'm interested in how this feels when you're playing it on a mouse, actually, because I've only ever like played it on controller.
Huh.
And it's like it kind of feels very different as like it's like a bit of a regular kind of like action RPG instead of like a turn-based one. Because like you've got like all the abilities like mapped to the face buttons, and so it's kind of just like you're doing regular attacks rather than like having to select them individually.
Yeah, so I guess if you don't have, do you have a cursor during turn setup?
No, you like just kind of like move around regularly, and then you like activate your attacks with the face buttons.
Huh. So yeah, that's really interesting. So having a cursor during turn lets you place things and aim with a pretty good deal of precision without having to move at all. But during live combat, the selection or selecting different functions is it's a lot different than I guess it would be just using the face buttons like that, because you got to use 1, 2, 3, or 4 on the number keys, or you got to use the scroll wheel, which is a bit imprecise because it scrolls very quickly, or you gotta move down and click on it.
Yeah.
And so there's a level of time that you have to account for whenever you're gonna change attacks.
Yeah, and I guess it's like it's kind of an interesting like gameplay-wise decision, because like it would definitely make you play a whole lot differently. Like I can't really see myself playing the way that I would usually play it with a mouse and keyboard, because that would be just bizarre. It'll be interesting to see how you keep going through all this kind of stuff. I kind of feel bad that I made you use this weird combination, to be honest.
No, like that's the whole point of this like part of the Let's Play, is bringing in other people's ideas and having fun with it. Like, give me the weird stuff. I like it. So we're in the midst of another round of combat, and it's a bit of a second verse, same as the first. The men are a little bit more spaced out right now, so I have to deal with running from the haircuts basically no matter where I am, except for one corner way in the back, and then a whole bunch of guys are going to spawn in. But it's not going to be that different from the first one. So while all that is unfolding, I believe you have a topic in particular that you would like to talk about.
Yes. So yeah, if anyone doesn't know, I do like music stuff and mess around with the bleep and a bloop from time to time. But the music in this game is actually really interesting. It's like similar in kind of concept to the Supergiant's last game, Bastion. The music is done by Darren Korb, who's like just fantastic. I want to be him on there. He's so good at everything. But the way that this game like marries the whole concept of Red as a character, like she's lost her voice. She like is a singer who's lost her basically reason for being. Like it's really deep and like makes you feel a lot of things. At least it did for me. But the way that it marries the concept of like her like having lost her voice, only being able to hum, and then like the way that it kind of like always features humming in the background, especially like at the moment during turn. It always kind of like drops everything else away and just kind of makes like her voice, like the echo of her voice, like the primary focus. And I especially love it during turn because it's like she's focusing like as hard as you can on anything. Like she just.
If I may interrupt briefly, the development name, the code name for turn is focus.
Yes. But yeah, like when she's like kind of putting it all on the line essentially, and like how to say, I guess like it's kind of when she's incredibly like just laser focusing on what it is that she needs to do. She's still got music in the back of her mind because like it's who she is, and the way that it's implemented is perfect essentially. Like there's so much in the design of this that like would influence what I would want to do if I eventually make a video game. Anyone who wants to make video games out there, hit me up.
Please look in the description for New Vegas' SoundCloud account.
It's okay. I've got a little bit on that. Yeah. Another interesting thing actually about the music in this is that it's all done with a series of layers. So the way that it works essentially is that there is like an underlying it's the way that a lot of music in modern games works actually, but there's like an underlying like kind of bed track, which is like the main soundtrack of like an area, and then if you enter into like a battle, then they'll like kind of like add in extra layers and like automate things so that it gets a lot more intense. And then in this game, they made the best decision that has ever been made in a video game, and they gave you a button to hum.
That was rough.
And it is so good.
Gotta keep going.
What can
It is. It's very good. It's so good that it shows up in the online component.
Let's see.
Yes.
Old is this town. Stuff.
And it's actually really interesting if you consider that they like already had an entire soundtrack for this, and they added an extra vocal instrument, which like completely changes the feel of each of the songs. Like it gives it a whole new like kind of center. It's beautiful all the time, every time.
You mentioned that this is very similar. The music is very similar to Bastion's soundtrack, and I mean, I own both soundtracks standalone, and I've listened to them quite a lot. They're both very good, and in terms of similarity, I did notice that there are some. I don't. My music vocabulary is a little bit lacking, but there are some recurring. I guess ideas, pieces that persist between the two. It's like certain kinds of sounds. There's this like ka-cha ka-cha sound that shows up in certain pieces.
I think I'm not entirely sure, but I think that Darren Korb is
Let's fly.
is like primarily a guitarist. Because there is a video on YouTube actually, that is a duet between him and the lady who did vocals for the first one, whose name escapes me. But they're singing the Setting Sail Coming Home thing live, and he's playing the guitar and singing there, and it's beautiful, fantastic. Definitely go watch it if you're into Bastion. I feel like the way that he would probably compose this music is that like he would just kind of like sit down, like just bash out like a vague progression for it on like the guitar, and then kind of just like plot that over into the setting that he needs. Which I think, especially in this game, he did a fantastic job, because it's got a really kind of like sci-fi, like future-y kind of aesthetic to it, and he manages to like hit that mark perfectly while also like maintaining his own kind of style, which is incredibly hard to do, and he did it spectacularly well in this. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, a bit of a weird techno kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like it's cyberpunky, but like not. I don't really know how to describe it. I just love it, and I want to do it. Want to have it.
So this is kind of a bit of a personal preference here thing, but which do you prefer between his two works?
Oh gosh. Oh, you can't say that to me. You can't do this. I feel like a lot of there are a lot of individuals like songs in Bastion that I like, but I think as a whole this probably hits the mark a little bit better for me. It's kind of in terms of like the aesthetic, just because I'm a little bit more of like a future guy than a weird country guy. Not to say there's anything wrong with that.
Ever since I started listening to this, I've kind of felt that I don't exactly want to say suffers, but I can't quite come up with a better word. I feel like the soundtrack for Transistor sort of suffers from being so much larger than Bastion's.
Yeah, there's definitely. I mean, I think the decision to make like Red a singer definitely influenced a lot of the production. Whether or not it's a good thing is kind of up for debate. I very much like the idea, and I feel like it's something that they like. They're clearly a very music focused like dev team, and they put a lot of care and effort into it, and it really shows. And I think they might have just kind of wanted to do something a little bit more with it, because in Bastion the music is important, and it does a lot like thematically, which is like is all really good, but they kind of wanted to like show off a little bit more, I feel like, and like especially in implementing the humming mechanic, like it's not relevant at all to the gameplay, but it just kind of like fleshes out the character a whole lot more than like you could otherwise, and it does a lot. I really like it. I'm very upset that I don't have the version of the album with the vocal tracks. This is actually like fully like fleshed out vocal lines for like all of the songs, I think, or at least some of them.
There's hummed versions for a lot of the major songs. I don't know about fully vocalized though.
I can't remember. I was looking into it a long while ago, and I think there might just be some of them. But I'm very upset that I don't have that one. I'll probably try and obtain it one day on the internet, as I'm known to do from time to time.
We're not friends on Steam, are we?
I don't think so. We should be.
I need to... We'll remedy that
Yes.
after this.
Of course.
So, let's take a break from music chat, briefly. Talk about the video game, as it is unfolding before us.
That's right. That's why we...
This is the second fight in a row where I have managed to lose bomb, at least in the main slot. Can't lose the passives, which is good because it ensures that I still have access to some packets. But it does become a whole nother ball game when your main source of damage disappears from you.
If Royce can hold him off, so can
That
you.
would...
And then, unfortunately, with the way the game prioritizes overloading things, it's always going to be the first one I lose. But,
Next.
Yeah, that was always kind of a little bit of an issue when it was like my first playthrough. I kept on switching things up and then being like, oh, I keep on losing my best damage.
Whatever Royce sees.
Well, that's the go.
I don't.
Whenever people make a change, whether
Yeah, I feel like
anywhere in between,
this particular loadout maybe hits its stride in New Game Plus 1
behind the scenes,
because like
well, I say whoever does
the
real work
enemies
ought to get
aren't
the credit.
too powerful and like they don't hit
I found a
you
way to put the
that
process
hard.
center stage,
and so like it's a good enough combination
if you will. Way to keep the process
what that's
working
worth,
in
but like
concert.
once you kind of start progressing a lot further and everything just like beefs up a whole lot more, it's maybe not as optimal.
Bet this leads
so far as I'm aware,
somewhere.
there
other than
isn't
here.
like new game double plus or anything.
Transistor. I have no idea
Like
what's
it doesn't
inside.
track how many recursions you've done beyond one.
Oh really?
My theory.
I
Yeah.
thought there was like a...
I mean, at least
All they are
it the process has like set stats. You know, Lauber version 3.0 has set number of HP, does set amount of damage, and all that. In my granted not exhaustive perusals of the code, I haven't seen any sort of scaling like you're talking about. But it might exist. I might have just missed it.
I always like I felt like things got like a little bit easier than they might have like should have been, but also I was kind of a little bit out of it while I started playing my later runs, so I might have just kind of made it up. I do that from time to time.
It's a little bit hard to tell with this game.
So
I feel like they might have intended that kind of thing to exist because there was a 4.0 version planned for all processes except for the men, and that just never got implemented. But so far as I'm aware, it only just cares if you are on a recursion.
It's bizarre. Like it's like I always kind of I thought they were a little bit more unforgiving, I guess, with their later runs. Might just be because when I was playing Bastion, I was really terrible at it,
Been through worse.
and like once I started putting anything on, like it just kind of ruined me.
So right now I'm kind of running around because on this screen, Royce's little proxy tends to get a bit lost after the fight.
Yeah,
And then with enough running around, he shows back up.
My life,
I always had trouble around this area for some reason.
very persuasive.
I got very confused when there were multiple paths. I was like, where am I going?
Supported my endeavors. The Camerata was his idea. I was all for it. All for
People might recognize this particular bit of dialogue as the thing that he says on the next screen.
it. That's not quite the case.
This is me playing with the game.
Messing with my head.
The code is actually extremely easy to mess with. at least the dialogue and, well, certain things. The names.
And for her part, she knew where to find everyone we needed.
You could mess with the models a little bit if you've got some knowledge of XML files.
Ooh.
After that, we all split up.
I've seen talk of replacing Red's model with a Clucker's.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of feel like after we finish up here, I might have to try and do that. That sounds kind of great. I do feel like they had a missed opportunity to just have a bunch of the bounce pads just kind of everywhere. Because those were great.
You didn't get enough of them in the first time?
No, they were a good time.
Yeah.
I love jumping around the city.
Found it on a lark. Right around here, geographically.
Weird cubes,
Although geography was
floating cubes.
a small factor, there was also the map.
Yeah, I really like sort of the aesthetic that they've got going on here in Fairbank.
Yeah, like you can.
Fairview. Why did I say? Because it's Cloudbank. Fairview. Because you've got sort of the hyper geometric stuff that the process likes to implement.
Looking for someone like me.
And then there's still the bits and pieces of the city that they haven't quite managed to get rid of yet.
Yeah, it's
like the stained glass windows.
yeah.
Oh, and okay,
Camerata's targets.
we're both going to shut up here because this is an important line of dialogue that explains certain things.
The transistor. It has some rather strange qualities, peculiarities. For example, if you use it to, say, take somebody's life, it'll take you away. Wherever you are, it'll take you away.
Yeah, so that's why the start of the game unfolds like it does.
Oh.
Is the transistor kills Jack, and then I guess Red goes and tries and puts her hand on it, and then the teleport function activates and it sends them across town. And that's also why they are able to escape the country at the end of the game, is because you kill Royce and then the teleporter function activates.
This is something.
I don't know why, but I've always kind of felt like this game would kind of benefit from a comic. Like it has a really like well-defined style, and I'd like to see more of it. So they should make a comic and just dedicate it to me, I think.
There you are.
No, that would be kind of cool, especially to maybe see a little bit more of the people who are inducted into the Camerata.
And I mean, it's like they're a really kind of interesting bunch. Like I always kind of like, with the exception of like the regular crappy boys, like I always thought it was kind of like a lot better of a villain design than a lot of villains, because like he's not just like, oh, I want to destroy the world because it's bad and I want to end it. Like he actually has a legitimate reason that's like understandable. It's kind of like, yeah, I feel where you come from.
Yeah, like I spent a good deal of time thinking about the Camerata's little motto of when everything changes, nothing changes, and after a good amount of while, I think I managed to hit on what they were trying to go for with that.
Yeah. So
the way I read it is there's this idea that when a population doesn't have to worry about things, they get progressively more and more indulgent, and so they don't have to change. And in a city where no one ever actually has to do much work, it's all just for your own entertainment and edification, you are free to let your desires spiral out of control.
makes a lot of sense, actually.
And that's what the Camerata was afraid of, was that if nothing ever had to change, then things would basically collapse in on themselves.
I can especially see that in a city like this, because like everything, it's like a lot of kind of like futures where they're like everyone's like all in heaven because they don't have to do any work anymore. Like, it would be supremely boring. I've like been on holidays for a couple of months and I'm in hell. I feel like everyone has to have something to do, and if you don't, you just kind of stagnate. And like, it is really important for them to like have jobs, I guess. Like, you have to keep the people satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, like, they've all got jobs, but it's just you select your job and then you have it. There's
not really like it.
The game never gives any sense that anybody has to work at anything. Like I mean, I guess with the exception of the athletes like Olmark who have to train their bodies, but you know, the radio reporter Tennigan, he goes from a deacon to the most popular radio personality in the entire city, with no effort. And that's like that's a comment on the strength of his charisma, but also a comment on like how easy it is to make major life transitions in this city.
Yeah. Like, if anyone can do anything, what's the point in being good at anything, really? Like, Red's certainly an exceptional singer, and like, that's great. I'm absolutely a fan. But like, if anyone else can like play in the same theater that she does, for example, like, where's the real like inclination to be good at it if just anyone can wander in and join you?
And so I guess they tried to fix that by putting the power to change in the hands of a few individuals rather than in the entire population. And so that way, I don't know, maybe it had to become more meritocratic.
And
it's a little hard to say what exactly their end game was.
I kind of feel like it was probably just like Royce that was in charge of everything, and everyone else was just kind of like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
No, Grant was in charge. Royce was the brains, but Grant had the plan.
I am a little out of touch with with most of the story of this game, unfortunately. But yeah, he reminds me of, I don't know, someone who would implement his own goals, I guess.
Well, all the Camerata had their own reasons for doing what they did. There's a common goal, but with different reasons for reaching it. Now this here is all just cosmetic. I think I was doing this just to pad for time so we could have more time to talk. Because there's only one fight after this, and it's gonna be a completely different loadout.
Oh, that's good.
So, given that we are here at the very end, we are not gonna go see Royce in this episode because there's been more changes there than anywhere else, and I want to give that all of the limelight. So here is where we are going to sign out. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, New Vegas, for joining me and providing some probably the most insightful commentary this series has had thus far.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad I was able to just kind of waffle on about garbage and music stuff. It's what I live for.
I think most of the garbage was coming out of me there. Oh, alright. I will see you all next time.
See you later.